Okay, so I pulled this off just to clean the engine and everything, so I'm just going to put it back on now. That's okay, I guess. You have to take this off to get the these two bolts off. Okay, so the next thing I have to do is put this cover plate over. I ordered this from Tektronix. It's kind of expensive for what it is, but it's really nicely CNC machined. It's a really quality part. So although $60 felt like a lot for this part, I think it was worth it. All the faces are machined, so it's... I mean, those CNC machines aren't cheap. And this is kind of a specialized part, so that's going to be why it's going to cost 60 bucks. Next thing, I got to put the freeze plug in here. Alright, so we got the surface pretty clean. Got our new head gasket here. Boom. I didn't change out these dowel pins because I don't really think you need to. I also couldn't find them anywhere. Drop the cylinder head right on there. Got brand new head bolts because I'm smart. Alright, then we're going to just start by dropping a couple of these in place. One spot I won't use power tools. You always want to get new head bolts when you're doing something like this. Okay, so for the sequence on these bolts, what I've come up with is it goes from the front of the engine, goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You want to go all to 30 foot-pounds, then 44 foot-pounds, and then you do an additional quarter turn, and then you do an additional quarter turn after that. So you go through the sequence 4 times, first at 30, second at 44, then a quarter, and then another quarter. So basically I had to do that 4 times. Okay, so here we have the distributor from the Mark II. So here we have the distributor from the Mark II. And here we have the distributor from the Mark III. What we need to do is we need to change this gear on the bottom. So there's a pin in there right here, and we got to knock that pin out. Alright, so we're getting this pin out, and we're just knocking it through. Take the kit that you bought from Tektronix, because you're not a cheapo. Because you're not cheap. When you work on engines, don't be cheap. And since you are a cheapo, you have these pliers. That's good. Alright, well that was a pain in the ass. Then we have this lovely little thing that fits right in here. Oh no!
What?
We gotta take this pin out again.
Are you kidding me?
I just made, you gotta put this gear on after you put this around it, because this doesn't fit through there. So you gotta take this back out. We got that in there, and that all seems to work as it should. Next thing I'm gonna do is pop that freeze plug in. Freeze plug came, my stuff from Tektronix. They sponsored all 161 of my subscribers, so no, they did not sponsor me. Actually paid more for all these little parts from them than I paid for the engine itself. You just want to tap it in and make sure it's going in even. You want to tap it in just a little past. Alright, so it's another night out here. It's like 9 o'clock. I'm just getting started, but I want to get some stuff done tonight. So I'm going to paint this valve cover. I got to grind it down first. I think it would be good if it matched the block. I don't know how well this paint is going to last or not. It seems like it's kind of flaking off already, which is pretty disappointing. But I'm not going to film too much of the whole painting process because that doesn't really have anything to do with the swap itself. Okay, so I didn't quite realize this the other night, but this little freeze plug also goes right down here. So I'm going to get a socket that's just a little smaller. Of course, it's a 13 because 13 is what we've needed for everything, and then I can just tap that in there. Now, although I think these might be the same from engine to engine, I'm going to use the support from the Mark II Okay, so this bracket has 2 bolts, 2 long and 2 short. The 2 long ones go on the top, the 2 short ones go on the bottom, which goes right on like that. Okay, so I'm going to begin the timing process of this, and just to let everyone know quick, I'm not planning on running all of the timing covers. I fully understand the risks. You can scold me in the comments below if you think I'm an idiot, that's fine. But I've got this, I don't have the valve cover on because I want to be able to see the camshaft. The paint on the valve cover is still drying, so I've got this, this little piece sits right up here. You can see right here there's the OT mark, and right here there's the OT on the camshaft, so we just want to move that over ever so slightly so that arrow is just right in the middle of that gear, in between those 2 teeth. Down here on this we have the OT mark as well. Now on this pulley, I don't have this bolted on yet because we need to keep it off so we can get the timing belt on. There's this little notch in the back right here. I don't know if you can see that, but I've taken a silver Sharpie and marked that. Now this lines up on the crank only in one way. So there's 5 holes and it lines up right like that. So we want to set this also to top dead center, and you'll see these 2 marks are going to line up with each other, just like that. So you can see how those 2 marks line up. That's exactly how the engine needs to stay. So we're going to take this cover, this pulley off, and we're going to take our timing belt, and it's always a good idea to replace the timing belt if you're doing something like this, because it's a lot of work to do it when it's still in the car, for most cars at least. Got a new pulley as well, a new tensioner. So the key now is to get everything on here without rotating it. And now I can rotate this pulley, and then I can tighten that down. And I'll get that tighter in a second, but what I want to do is just crank the engine around a few times. It looks like we're possibly off by a tooth here. I'm not quite sure. So what we're going to do here is we're going to rotate our engine fully around till we come back to that top dead center mark right there. Once I got that good, I took a piece of welding rod and I bent it around, and then I was able to put this pry bar in there and pull the tensioner and then tighten it down with it tight. So I'll show you what I made. So basically I just bent this little piece of 1/8 inch welding rod so it fit right in the tensioner, and that worked just fine for me. I know there's probably a proper tool out there, but I don't have it, so that worked out real well. Okay, so down in here, this is where the distributor goes. You have to make sure, you can see that little tab right down in there. That has to line up with those lines. You can just spin it. Might be easier with a pair of pliers, so that matches that line, so it's parallel with the engine block. And then you can take your distributor, and if everything's in time, you should be facing that direction. With that done and the engine in time, I can finally put the valve cover on. Got my gasket right here. I cleaned all around the top of the head. Before you put the valve cover on, you got to put this little cover on. Goes on like that. Make sure your gasket is on everywhere, all the way around. There we go. And then you can just tighten all your nuts down and it'll be good to go. And this little grommet's a little bit of a pain to get in, but you got to put this in there first. Might need to put a little screwdriver action behind it. Hopefully not marring up the paint. Yeah. That slides in there like that. And then this piece can go right in. So I'm putting this one timing cover on here. Now you have to slide this bracket on first. And then there's a bolt around the other side. So there's two. Alright, next thing we're going to do is come around back and install our intake manifold. I've got a new gasket right here for that. I didn't paint the intake manifold or anything, but I polished it up and put a couple coats of clear on it. I think it looks pretty nice. Now let's see, we just rest that on there. Do here. Next thing we're putting on here is the water pump, so we can finally pull this piece of tape off. Just been leaving it on because there's no reason to expose inside of the engine when you don't have to. Alright, and actually I want to put a little RTV around the water pump gasket. Just gotta ease it into its place. So now it's not going to go anywhere. Now I need to get the other two bolts to hold it on. And again, these are all 13 mil. This is the one that gets bolted from the bottom, the power steering pump. At least the bracket that holds it on. Get a long bolt and then a short bolt. And then the alternator can go over that. And these actually, you can't put them in yet without putting that alternator bracket on. Okay, so I ended up actually taking the alternator all the way off of this. And then I got to take these two bolts the rest of the way out so I can put the rest of this housing on there. Through this, goes into here. Okay, so I've just slipped my alternator belt on, and now the way you tighten this is pretty cool actually. You've got this big nut here with it's got a gear shaft on it, and then this 13 mil. You're gonna want to take a big wrench. I don't have one the right size. And you can turn that. And then you can tighten this down. And there, now your belt's nice and tight. Now for the second bolt, there's two 13 millimeter bolts on the back of the power steering pump. And then there's another nut, 13 mil nut right here. So you gotta have all those loosened. And you can get your belt on like this. If you don't get it tight enough, it's gonna rub on this pulley. So I just had kind of a stupid oops moment, and I'm curious to see if anybody caught it. I've been messing with this Mark III oil filter housing the whole time. I put this filter housing on there, and I've been wondering the whole time. I was like, I don't quite remember what hooks up to this. But this is the Mark III one, so I don't need this filter housing. I gotta use the one from the Mark II. So I gotta take this back off and swap it over. Which is okay, because this didn't really clean up that nice anyway. So if anyone's wondering why this was on there, the answer is it's not supposed to be. So now I can put the oil filter on. Okay, so I've got the engine turned on its side. What I'm doing here is I'm going to take off the clutch. And if you just try to turn these, you'll just turn the whole engine, or the flywheel will just spin like that. So I'm going to put my knee on it and my body, the weight of my body to turn it. I'm sure there's some special tool or some special way to do this, but this is what I've come up with. And these are some weird sized bolts. The closest thing I have is an 11/32 12 point. Flywheel should be able to come off now. It came right off. Well, I ordered this flywheel from Barn Burner, and I was pretty excited about it, but it turns out the exact same flywheel is already on my engine, so I guess I don't even know what I'm going to do. Okay, so on the pressure plate, there's this big snap ring looking thing. I'm going to say that needs to come out. Look. Yeah, alright, that's not too bad. That actually came off a lot easier than I expected it to. This comes right up, and we got all ourselves 6 bolts in there. And this is when it pays to have an impact gun. Just like that.